After all she went through in the palace, he lured her in, thinking he had a change of heart, but eventually abandoned her for another woman. Let's find out why. Kindly subscribe to this channel for more of our latest stories. This movie begins in a kingdom where the current king has finally been buried. However, just as his son, Prince IK, was about to leave for America, the elders and his mother stopped him. They persuaded him and made him see the reasons why he had to stay. Reluctantly, he angrily left and went inside. However, the elders held a meeting. One of them was planning to take over the throne if the prince insisted on leaving, but they all disagreed. Meanwhile, a young lady named Metchi, MB for short, came to a chief's house. The chief offered her a drink and wanted her to give herself in return, but she ran away. Her sister, ONYII, was disappointed that MB didn't give herself to him despite the gifts he offered as a sign of love. But MB left. That same day, Prince IK was still receiving reasons from his mother why he should stay, but let's see if he will choose to stay. Meanwhile, ONYII was confronted by the chief, who demanded his money back because she hadn't kept her side of the agreement. She picked a fight with him after proving herself and ran away. Days later, Prince IK agreed to become king. When he announced it, he also shared that he had a fiancée, but they disagreed with his choice. They insisted he marry a woman from their hometown. In the room, Prince IK expressed his disagreement with the tradition of the land. He wasn't willing to give in and let go of his woman, Sophia. Then he left. The next day, ONYII was upset, asking why her sister was coming up with all sorts of excuses not to follow her to see the chief. ONYII decided to stop giving in and left. Later that day, ONYII's father asked MB about his daughter. She lied to cover for her, but he reminded her that her stay in the house was meant to influence his daughter to behave well. He then sent her away. Later that night, Prince IK was on a call with Sophia. She explained to him the demands of their tradition and the people, which he couldn't turn his back on, despite the plans they had. She didn't agree with what he was saying and ended the call. What would you do if your tradition demanded your presence as the only solution to lead a whole village and prosper the land? Would you leave to enjoy yourself outside the country, or would you stay? Kindly share your comments or thoughts on what your decision might be. The next day, ONYII was trying to sneak back in when her father caught her. She admitted that she had gone out to have fun. Her father then called her in for a talk and suggested the idea of her marrying the prince. However, she responded irresponsibly and showed no interest, then walked away, leaving her father in disappointment. One day at the palace, the prince told the elders that he was willing to marry a woman from their land, as they had requested. However, he reminded them that he was already in love with another woman. He then left. The elders held a meeting afterward, as they were responsible for selecting a wife for the king. ONYII's father suggested his daughter, but the entire council disagreed due to her irresponsible behavior. That day, when ONYII's father got home, he ignored her greeting and began insulting her, accusing her of bringing disgrace to the family. Later that evening, ONYII's father had a meeting with MB. After discussing how she had come to stay with them, MB expressed her willingness to do anything he asked. He told her about the prince and his desire for her to marry him. He also threatened to send her back to her old life, which was full of hardship and struggle, if she refused. A few days later, at the palace, one of the elders was reading out the names of the available maidens. When MB's name was mentioned, ONYII's father stepped in and spoke highly of her, noting that she lived with him and was well behaved. The queen agreed to consider her, and the prince insisted that preparations for the marriage begin. That same day, ONYII's father returned home and told MB to pack her things because the prince had chosen her. With no other choice, she packed her belongings. When they arrived at the palace, the queen was surprised and told ONYII's father it wasn't appropriate to bring her immediately. However, after hearing his explanation and understanding the urgency, she accepted his perspective and welcomed MB. Guys, do you think the prince will treat MB well, considering he's doing this mainly for the sake of the people? Let's wait and see if MB will be able to survive life in the palace. That night, the prince gave MB strict instructions not to get on his bed and to respect the space he had assigned to her. The next day, while MB was having a meal with the queen, the prince entered and immediately ordered MB to leave, leaving his mother surprised. Later, while MB was enjoying her food alone in her room, the prince came in and took over the table she was using. The next morning, the prince found MB's underwear in his restroom and was disgusted. He threw it away. That same morning, MB came to ask the prince about her missing underwear. He was visibly irritated, but MB still went to retrieve it from the trash, leaving the prince in disbelief. Later that night, MB woke the prince up because she couldn't find a latrine to use. The prince, annoyed, got up and showed her where it was. However, she didn't use it. Instead, she defecated into a nylon bag and disposed of it in a corner of the palace compound that night. The next morning, one of the maidens discovered the bag of feces and immediately informed the queen. Disgusted, the queen reported the incident to the prince and said she wanted to consult the elders, believing it was a bad omen and a sign that evil was coming to the palace. The prince gave her permission. When the queen returned, MB came forward and admitted to her that she was responsible for the feces in the compound. The queen and everyone else were shocked. The prince scolded her harshly for her actions, and she apologized to him. Guys, do you think MB will last long in the palace? It seems she isn't destined for this kind of life, but the prince's next action will surprise you. One day, ONYII's father was enjoying himself when his daughter came in and tried to join him. He refused her and began insulting her, making comparisons to MB, who had chosen to make life easier for him. He continued to praise MB as time went on. Back at the palace, the prince called a meeting with the elders to discuss a suspension he wanted to impose on MB due to her inability to adapt to palace life. This sparked a debate among the king's council. In the end, the prince concluded that MB would be punished according to the land's traditions. One of the chiefs addressed the issue, arguing that nature cannot be denied and that some traditions needed to be revised. All the elders agreed. ONYII's father then proposed a new path forward, which everyone accepted. Later that day, the queen pleaded with her son to show mercy, but he refused, insisting that tradition must be upheld. Disappointed, she walked away. The next day, ONYII's father went to see the queen, who expressed concern about the punishment MB was about to receive. He explained that nothing like this had ever happened in their history, and even in a similar case, the offender was only flogged. The queen agreed to use that same punishment so MB could still become the king's wife. The following day, when ONYII heard what had happened to MB at the palace, she confronted her father. She demanded that he bring MB back, but he refused, saying MB had brought him and the family nothing but good fortune. On this beautiful morning, after the queen discovered that MB had been sleeping on the floor, she became furious. She went to her son in tears, expressing how unfairly MB was being treated and insisting that she didn't deserve such humiliation. However, the prince said nothing. Later, the prince confronted MB and harshly told her how useless she was to him. He called her names and walked away. Guys, do you think the prince is handling this the right way? Let's stay with the story. Something big is about to happen. The queen, deeply worried, shared her concerns with one of the chiefs about how her son was treating MB. The chief encouraged her to be patient. One night, MB was suffering from a fever and shivering uncontrollably. When the prince saw her in that state, he felt compassion for her and gently covered her with his wrapper. The next morning, MB woke up surprised that the prince had shown her any concern at all. That same morning, the prince asked the palace maidens to prepare a special meal for him and his future wife. He spent time with MB and showed her unexpected care and affection. Later that day, ONYII's father came by to check on MB. He encouraged her and also mentioned the need to restock some supplies at home, which she promised to discuss with the queen. That night, while the prince had been drinking and fell asleep, MB went to use the restroom. On her way back, the prince reached out, pulled her close, and lay with her. The next morning, as MB was about to leave, the prince stopped her and asked her to stay a little longer. They spent quality time together. Wow! The prince had finally begun to accept MB, but will this kind of love last? Let's find out together. You don't want to miss what's coming next. On a special day, the queen shared a heartfelt moment with MB, who was getting ready for her wedding to the prince. The queen offered her words of encouragement and support. That same day, in the palace, the king gathered the elders and honored them during an official meeting. He spoke about changes in the kingdom and announced the abolition of some outdated customs. He then spoke highly of MB, but shockingly, he canceled the upcoming wedding. The prince declared that his heart belonged to someone else and that he didn't want to enter into a marriage out of pressure. With that, he ended the meeting. MB entered the room with a heavy heart. When the king arrived, she broke down in tears and pleaded with him, confessing that she had truly come to love him. But because his heart did not accept her, he simply walked away, leaving her crying in pain and heartbreak. Later that same day, the king opened up about how he would truly feel if he were to marry MB. His mother was concerned for MB, but he had already made his decision. MB, alone with her thoughts, reflected on the memories she had shared with the prince. As the other maiden came to pack her belongings, the queen gently apologized to MB, calling her dear, and reminded her that everything happens for a reason. Though the moment was painful, there was nothing more to be done. The king remained by himself for a while, deep in thought. But on a fateful day, Sophia, the prince's fiancée, arrived, and he welcomed her warmly. This story teaches us the importance of allowing people to make their own choices. We should not limit others based on tradition. Just as humans once created the rules, they also have the power to change them, especially when those rules no longer serve the interests of the people. So friends, if you enjoyed this story, kindly subscribe to this channel to get more of our latest stories.